Now, in this recording, we're going to look at an extension to the if statement, and that's known as the if-else statement. So, what I'm going to do as an example here is I'm going to do an exam mark example. So, where a student has got 40% or greater, they achieve a pass, and if they get less than 40%, that's a fail. So, what I'm going to do is I'm going to hop over to one I made earlier, and here it is. So, we've got an integer called exam mark, and we've given them an exam mark of 20, which is, I'm sure you realize, is a fail. And we said if exam mark is greater than or equal to 40, then the student will have passed. So it'll print out the student has passed. So when we run this, we see that absolutely nothing comes up on the screen, and that's because the student has failed. If we give the student a pass mark, which is, let's say, for example, 60, that's greater than or equal to 40, and we see that the student has passed. So you notice that even if I give the student 40, because it's greater than or equal to 40, the student will still pass at that, which is exactly the way it should be. The trouble is, though, when the student fails, let's give them a 35 here, as we saw a moment ago, nothing comes up on the screen. It doesn't tell us that they've failed. It just doesn't bother telling us that they've passed either. So you might think that because when this is not true, this doesn't get printed, that we move on directly to here, that this is the appropriate place to put the fail printf. But that's not the case, and we'll see that in a moment. So the has failed. Okay. Let's give that a run. So the student has failed in this. Well, we'll put them back to a pass for a moment. I'll just put them to 45. And we notice that the student has passed and the student has failed. They've done both. If we have it as indeed just a fail, it comes out the student has failed. So if you saw that first, you might well think, oh, well, that's okay, that's fine, that's working correctly. But in actual fact, if you don't test it for all the different cases, you might well miss the fact that that isn't working. So, how do we solve this problem? Well, we solve it by saying, putting in an else statement here. And so this reads as if the exam mark is greater than or equal to 40, print out the student has passed, else print out the student has failed. So we have an if and an else, and they're mutually exclusive. Only one of them can happen, so it's either this one or this one, but it can't be both, and it can't be neither either. Okay, so it must be at least one of them. So let's give that a go. The student has failed in this case, and we see that the student has failed. If we change that to a pass mark of 75, we see that the student has passed. Okay, be wary. A lot of students immediately go to put in another set of brackets here as if they're to put in some criteria. This else and what happens in it is purely based on this criteria up here, or this question up here. So it's only if this is false that this gets run. We don't need to ask another question here. There may be situations where you want to ask another question. So in other words, there may be 3 or 4 or 5 things that you want to test for. Let's say, for example, we want to see if a student got over 80, we want to say that they've passed with flying colours, and otherwise we want to say that they've failed. So what we can do is we can put in another else here. But if we want to put in another criteria, we must put in another if. So what we'll do is, you'll see that this will go wrong on me at first, but I'll explain to you how to do it properly in a moment. So we'll say if exam mark is greater than or equal to 80. So remember that this is going to go wrong on me first, and then we'll see how to do it correctly. We'll say it with honours. Okay. So what we're saying is if the student got greater than or equal to 40, they passed. If they got greater than or equal to 80, they passed with honours, and otherwise they must have failed. Okay. The trouble is that's not what's going to happen. Let's give them 75 first of all. The student has passed. That's fine. Let's give them a fail. So we'll put that as 35. And the student has failed. That all seems fine, so it must be working, except for the fact that if I give them 95, we see that the student has passed, not that the student has passed with honours. And the reason for that is that the way the if statements work is it tests the first one. And if that's true, it does the first one and then it jumps straight to the end and it's done. Okay, it doesn't bother checking any of the rest. It's only if this is false that it will then go and check this one. And if that's true, it'll run it. And if it is, it'll jump straight to the end. And if that's false, then it'll go to this one and it'll do it. So, because of the fact that any student that gets 80 or over has automatically passed, they're a smaller group of students than this one. So really and truly what we need to do is we need to take that section there and put it first. Okay. So if the exam mark is greater than or equal to 80, go and do this. And then say, sorry, so I'll just take that and cut it out of there. So now we have, if the exam mark is greater than or equal to 80, the student is passed with flying colours. Else, if it's greater than or equal to 40, okay, now that will in effect mean that if it's greater than or equal to 40, it'll also be smaller than 80, because otherwise this wouldn't have happened, okay? And otherwise the student has failed. Let's give that a go. We'll start them with the 95, which is, they've done the full thing. I've made some mistake here, and can I spot it? Perhaps you've already spotted it. I've said else, but I haven't put in an if here in this case, so I haven't done a test for anything. Okay, so that was all in my copying and pasting that I got that wrong. So, student has got 95, the student has passed with honours. Let's give them 79, so that we're just short of it. The student has passed. Okay, so that's fine. They've passed, but they haven't passed with honours. And in the final case here, we'll give the student a fail. So we give them 24, for example, and we see that the student has failed. Okay. Right. So we can see there the if. We can see the if and the else together, and we can also do several of these if we want to. But it's important to realize the sequence that it does it in. That if this one is true, it only does it, and it jumps right to the end. If this one is false, then it'll test the next one, and if that's true, it'll print it and jump to the end. But if it's false, it'll go to the next one, which is the else in this case, and it'll do that one. Okay, so that's the sequence, and we can have as many of these if else, if else, if else, if else, all the way down if we like. Okay, as well as that, we could have another if statement in here if we wanted. That would only happen within this section. So you can have these nested if statements. And again, you'll see examples eventually where you'll use them, but I won't confuse the issue by putting you through those at the moment. Okay, so that's the if-else statement.